on firecracker use. Just like last year, households here in the nation's capital are not allowed to use firecrackers, and the use of pyrotechnics is limited to community fireworks displays. The Manila local government says community firecracker permits must be secured before they're allowed to conduct such displays. Back to you, Ruth.
Paulo Barcelon there reporting live from Manila. Happy New Year to you guys. In other news, the Cusi faction of ruling party PDP Laban files a petition to reopen the filing of certificates of candidacy for the 2022 elections. The petition was filed earlier today before the Commission on Elections. It also includes a motion to postpone or suspend the printing of ballots. In a statement, PDP Laban Secretary General Melvin Matibag explains there are several cases affecting candidates and party lists still pending before the COMELEC. As of November 25th, there are a total of 89 petitions for the cancellation of various candidacies. These include those filed against presidential aspirant Bongbong Marcos. There's also a petition questioning the legitimacy of the two factions of PDP Laban. Keep it here on CNN Philippines to get the stories as they happen. I'm Ruth Cabal. Happy New Year.
from has tried really their best to adapt, and I'm especially grateful for the teachers in my children's schools, because I see that they have tried their hardest to continue to make learning possible for my children, and to make them not so traumatized, I guess, by the fact that we're still in the middle of a pandemic. Let's ask Tito Joe and Joe, Michael, Franco, and Angelica the same question. Tito Joe, hi, Merry Christmas to you. Again, like I said, no, tradition, we can't do away with this. We always have to have this every Christmas. So for you, Tito Joe, and your other kids who are joining us via Zoom, what are you grateful for in 2021? What are those big things, big events that happened in your life in the last year?
Well, first of all, Pia, I want to thank you sincerely for having us every year, year after year. And, it's something that we look forward to every year. But to answer your question, the biggest challenge for me is running the business remote control. I have not flown to the south. I have not flown to Negros nor to Iloilo in 2 years. And, I talk to my people on the phone every day, 6 or 7 times a day. And then, of course, as Lisa mentioned, the challenge is getting the family together, especially Christmas time, because to me, Christmas, the joy of Christmas is doubled when you spend it with your family. And it's tripled when you have your grandchildren with you. And thank God, Mary Ann and I have now been blessed with 8 grandchildren.
8. Okay, Michael, what about you?
Yeah, Pia, of course, COVID took center stage this year as well as last year. So I'm just grateful that our family are still in relatively good health and we still have a chance, although not as often, to get together. So I'm grateful for those special moments.
Angelica? Angelica?
To say the same thing as Mike, COVID and its associated challenges has been very difficult for everyone. But I'm very grateful for the old friendships and family that have managed to help and nurture the relationships and withstand test of time, test of distance, and new friendships that have developed despite the remoteness and isolation that we face today.
I was about to say the same thing, no? Old and new friendships. Especially those you meet online. And I think there's a line you always say, and I say to them, I hope to meet you when this pandemic is over or when things are not as restricted. What about Joe, ikaw? The younger Joe.
Yeah. Pia, I would say that the biggest challenge is also what they were saying. So safety, keeping our families safe, and the schooling as well for the kids. So we have a daughter we had to send abroad. So we took her there and, we're in constant communication with her, making sure that she's also practicing, distancing and staying safe as well.
Wow. So extra challenging, syempre, no? We're not just... but there's not just distance here, even if you're in the same country, but when you have family members abroad and sending the kids abroad, no, it's like what? Parang tearing you apart from them. Franco, what about you?
Very similar, Pia. I think the challenge really has been on a daily basis to try to find, to not lose the hope, I guess. In many ways, we still find ways, to laugh. And I think that always livens the spirit. Despite, as my dad said, it has been 2 years. We didn't think we'd get this far. I mean, we didn't think that 2 years. We'd always think that maybe tomorrow will be better. But in many ways, that sort of hopeful mentality, I guess, has sort of kept all of us and sustained all of us, which I think is a good thing. It's both a challenge and I guess a blessing, just to keep that hope.
Extra challenging, but still, like you said, an extra blessing. Syempre, like I was saying earlier, people look forward to your dad's songs, no, Tito Joe. People look forward to your songs every Christmas, and not just in Christmas, no. So, and it was interesting the way you guys were able to, for like Christmas 2020, to do quarantine recordings, right? So, Tito Joe, just tell us a little bit about that. No, how challenging was that, and why did you feel it was so important for you to be able to do that?
Well, as Lisa mentioned, we had to partition our gatherings. For example, one of our traditional the traditional things that we do every Christmas is putting up our Christmas tree. When we all gather, all children and grandchildren, we decorate the Christmas tree with ornaments and decors that belong to each one of them throughout the years. I mean, we've had this same Christmas tree now for many, many years. And so putting up the Christmas tree is like looking at our family tree. But the past 2 Christmases, we have had to divide, like, okay, the first night, Lisa and her family, then the second night, Joe and his family, something like that. So, but it's still meaningful to us. And so it's important to keep that tradition going despite the global challenges.
A Christmas tree and a family tree. We'll be back after this very quick break with Jose Marichan and his children. Be right back.
Linsky General Merchandise, San Pedro District, Pagadian City, at bang sa balay sa mga pawaran kaniadto na maligya sa mga makina o piyesa sa mga nagkalain-laing sakyanan, sama sa 10-wheeler, forward, elf, bungo ug daghan pang uban. Tag-iya ug tagdumala mao si Madam Arlene Solihon Fernandez ug si handsome boy Jesse Fernandez, ang pinakailado nga surplus center sa Pagadian City, Zamboanga del Sur. Linsky General Merchandise.
Bang bang.
Libre ko San Miguel Beer, basta akin ang Tansan.
Tansan?
Sa San Miguel Oktoberfest Instant GCash Panalo Promo, uulan ng up to 100 million pesos in GCash prizes. Buy any San Miguel Beer, hanapin ang code sa crown. Kung meron, panalo ka! Iscan ang QR code sa mga posters at Facebook. I-type ang code and win!
Sali na!
Available in areas where allowed. See posters for full details. Promo runs from September 1 to December 31, 2021. Per DOH FDA CFR permit number 0424 series of 2021. Drink responsibly. Tandaan, laging i-check ang ilalim ng Tansan kung may winning code. Drink responsibly.
Ringo Honasan po. Sa pagbangon ng mga Pilipino, saludo ako sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Bilang isang ina, handa akong gawin ang lahat para sa kaligtasan ng aking mga anak.
Pandemya man, tuloy pa rin ang serbisyo para malinis ang kapaligiran.
Serbisyong publiko para sa kaligtasan ng lahat.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Ringo Honasan po. Saludo ako sa Pilipino.
Loren Legarda po. 18 years akong senador at nagsulong ng mga batas na nakakatulong sa mga nangangailangan. Free college education law.
Para sa aming edukasyon.
MSME law.
Batas para sa aming kabuhayan.
Climate Change Act.
Mga batas para sa kalikasan at climate change.
Mga batas na ginawa ko na napapakinabangan ngayon. Sana makatulong pa ako sa mas marami.
Loren Legarda.
This is a paid advertisement.
RPN Radio Philippines Network Radio Runda DXKP Pagadian Member Kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Begins on the first December morn. The reason for the season is baby Jesus being born. Forgive the hurts and disappointments of the past, and let us renew the ties with friends and make them last. It's great to be a child again at Christmas and all through the year.
Welcome back to the CNN Philippines Christmas tradition. Jose Marichan, or Tito Joe, to me and to many, and his children, Liza, Joe, Michael Franco, and Angelica, are joining us here in this Christmas special. So this question will go first to the Chan siblings, and I want to begin with those who are joining us via Zoom. So that would be Joe, Michael Franco, and Angelica. In the past Christmas episodes, our specials, I would always ask you about what were your Christmases like when you were kids, and you would make kwento about New York, for example, di ba? And so many other places. But now my question is, what kind of Christmases do you give your own children?
What we do still is the Advent calendar. So our youngest still gets excited every day to open the door for that day. So, for example, December 15th, what is the surprise lurking behind the door of December 15th? And so it's a countdown until you reach December 24th. So that's the tradition that continued with our kids as well.
Franco muna. Franco, what about you?
Well, naturally, I think you do what you know, right? So I think I've unconsciously been replicating the childhood I've had with my dad and my mom for the childhood that I'm sort of giving to my daughter and as my little growing family. I guess that's how traditions are made, no? I guess if I were to say that sort of togetherness, following the theme that Dad said. If togetherness has always been sort of a tradition, whether happy or sad, stupendous, or even simple ones, all of them are special. And I think that is one tradition that that I definitely am imparting, and I want my kid daughter to sort of get used to. No choice. Yeah.
Okay, well, Michael and Angelica pala don't have kids yet.
That's right.
Pero madadagdagan din yan, yung 8 grandkids. So we're going to go to Liza now. Liza, tell us.
Well, when I was growing up, as you know, I grew up in New York, and it was really just our immediate family. And so a big part of my Christmas were the religious traditions. So since my eldest was a young kid, I would bring him with me to Simbang Gabi, Misa de Gallo, and I think my kids still look forward to that excitement of they're tired, but then I wake them up and I say, we have to go. And then I try to involve them also with serving. It's better this Christmas because we're actually able to go to physical mass. Because I think really, I want to stress with my children that that's the most important reason for the season, right? I mean, it's not about the commercial Christmas, so we still do that.
That's true. Tito Joe, this Christmas, well, kanina you said na you'd always have to divide up the family, so Lisa's family first and Joe's for another on other different nights. But this Christmas, what is it going to be like? Will you get together with the kids and the grandkids? Of course, given the pandemic, and then we have this new variant coming in. What are your plans?
Well, I always stress upon my children that, especially because of this pandemic, the realization that the spirit of Christmas is giving and sharing. And so what better way, what better time to live that spirit of Christmas than now, because a lot of our people are suffering, a lot of people are unemployed, underemployed, and so in fact, in one of my songs that we all sang together, there's a portion there that Franco sang, and I will let him now recite the words to that stanza of "I remember my Christmas when we went around." Frank, why don't you?
Yeah, it goes like that. It goes. I remember my Christmas when we went around.
Wait, why are you reciting it? Sing it na. Go on, let's hear that chant.
I remember my Christmas when we went around. My daddy drove us down to some orphans in town. We gave lots of goodies away. Lots of happy faces made our day. We learned that giving and sharing is the real Christmas way.
Wow, giving and sharing, the real Christmas way. We'll have more on this CNN Philippines Christmas tradition with Joe Marichan and his children on Newsnight. Stay with us.
Ringo Honasan po. Sa pagbangon ng mga Pilipino, saludo ako sa mga taong patuloy na humaharap sa hamon ng pagbabago.
Bilang sundalo, tinataya kong aking buhay para sa ating kapayapaan.
Sa panahon ng pandemya, kami ang patuloy na humaharap sa frontline 24 oras.
Kaming mga guro ang gumagabay sa edukasyon ng mga kabataan.
Sa panahon ng krisis, ikaw, ako, magtulungan tayo. Ringo Honasan po. Saludo ako sa Pilipino.
Libre kong San Miguel beer, basta akin ng Tansan. Tansan?
Sa San Miguel Oktoberfest Instant GCash Panalo Promo, uulan ng up to 100 million pesos in GCash prizes. Buy any San Miguel beer, hanapin ang code sa crown. Kung meron, panalo ka! Iscan ang QR code sa mga posters at Facebook. I-type ang code and win!
Sali na!
Available in areas where allowed. See posters for full details. Promo runs from September 1 to December 31, 2021. Per DOH FDA CFR Permit Number 0424 Series of 2021. Drink responsibly. Tandaan, laging i-check ang ilalim ng tansan kung may winning code. Drink responsibly.
Loren Legarda po. 18 years akong senador at nagsulong ng mga batas na nakakatulong sa mga nangangailangan. Free college education law.
Para sa aming edukasyon.
MSME law.
Batas para sa aming kabuhayan.
Climate Change Act.
Mga batas para sa kalikasan at climate change.
Mga batas na ginawa ko na napapakinabangan ngayon. Sana makatulong pa ako sa mas marami.
Loren Legarda.
This is a paid advertisement.
RPN Radio Philippines Network Radio Rubunda DXKP Pagadian Member Kapisanan ng mga broadcaster ng Pilipinas.
Well, the pandemic has forced us to value what is really important. So the question here is, what gifts are you giving this Christmas? I know earlier you said, Tito Joe, that what's really important about Christmas. But can you share with us what gifts are you giving each other, if that's if that's okay? Tito Joe, you first.
Okay, so kids, what are you gonna give mommy and daddy this Christmas?
Oo nga naman. Sige, dapat Michael and Angelica should answer that question first. Sige nga, Michael. What are you gonna surprise them with? Clue na lang, clue.
Well, I was just talking to Mike about it. And perhaps just the gift of time and presence.
Oh, that's nice.
Given how many people are suffering everywhere, all over the world, especially many of our countrymen, at least in my case, I will be giving donations to charity or gifts in kind. And again, time spent, especially with those that I haven't seen in very, very long. I think that this pandemic has taught us the importance of being present and there for each other in this time of crisis.
So nicely said. Michael.
Yeah, there are certain charities and foundations which are very close to the hearts of my dad and my mom. So even more now than ever, during this pandemic, it's important to support these charities and foundations, which will really have a very positive impact on those who are going through a lot of difficulties now. Mm-hmm. So I think that'll be more meaningful to our parents this time.
I love how your dad redirects the questioning. Tamang-tama eh. So, Franco, can you answer that question?
Yeah, very similar also. I mean, not charities definitely. Maybe a lot of them focus on the children because Christmas really is for the children as well. But I think another factor is that a lot of our religious institutions, many especially our parishes and churches haven't had masses in a long time, and for many times a lot of the donations there and the alms they get a lot from just people who attend Mass. And since we haven't had that in such a long time, we make sure to remember them. So many times, I think through the example of mom and dad, we would oftentimes give them donations in their name. So I guess the surprise is which donation it will be, which charitable institution it will be this year.
You guys are so sweet. Joe. The younger Joe,
Yeah, I would say the same also, Pia. A practice among our titas and titos has been recently that in lieu of Christmas gifts, if we could donate to a charity of their choice, of their choosing. And so that has been actually a lot of the gifts that we've been giving this December to the less fortunate.
And Liza, I'm sure you're going to say the same thing, but there's also an added layer here because, like your other brother, one of your kids is abroad, no? So
Yes.
ibang klaseng Christmas to.
Yes. That's my son. Unfortunately, will not be with us this year. He will be the missing member of the family. So
don't cry.
Yeah. Thank God though for technology.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember when I studied abroad after college, I would be counting my quarters or my, to feed into the pay telephone, right?
Yeah.
But now we're spoiled. And so yesterday I spoke with my son and I was saying, well, how are you? And, did you do this? And make sure that you pay for this bill. And then he just mentioned very casually, oh yeah, I spoke with Lolo and Lola. They called me and they call me regularly and they're asking how I am. So at least we feel reassured that we have that, because it's hard to travel now with the pandemic, right? You have quarantine and then testing, and so it makes it prohibitive to travel as easily as we used to do before.
So thank God for technology, like you said, no? I mean, the very thing that we thought kept us apart before the pandemic is the one that's keeping us together. So thank you for that, especially in pag-Christmas time, no? When it's so important for Filipino families to be together, families all over the world, syempre. Final words na lang from Tito Joe. We'd love to hear from you, your Christmas message.
Well, I really hope and pray that this pandemic will soon be over. So I keep praying to Saint Joseph and to Mother Mary to help us. But anyway, I want to go back to your question. And the first thing that I want to do is to protect the people working for us, our employees. They're the first that you have to. And then, of course, you also help your parish churches. I'm talking now to the audience. Your parish churches need your help much more than ever. So I want to wish everyone a truly blessed Christmas, complete with God's loving blessings of good health, prosperity, and joy in your hearts. And I really hope, Pia, that this election we will be able to choose a leader with the help of God, that the leader who will have the vision to lift our country so that our people will have productive and better lives.
Thank you so much, Mr. Jose Marichan or Tito Joe. Thank you very much, and a Merry Christmas to you and to your children, of course, Liza, who's here in the studio, Joe, Michael, Franco, and Angelica. This has been a CNN Philippines Christmas tradition with Jose Marichan and his children here on Newsnight.
The first 5 cases of HIV were officially reported in 1981. And over the past 4 decades, scientists have made tremendous progress in learning more about the disease and searching for that cure. But here at home, HIV and AIDS continues to be a serious public health issue. We have one of the fastest growing HIV epidemics in the world, with over 75,000 Filipinos testing positive in 2020. And experts say only a small percentage of these Filipinos had the right information on HIV transmission as well as prevention. So, As we celebrate World AIDS Day, we need to come together and raise awareness on this issue. Support those who are living with it and honor those who have lost their lives to it. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. As we continue to deal with the effects of one pandemic, we urgently need to double our efforts into a growing problem here at home, HIV and AIDS. Our guests are here today to tell us more about the condition and how we can be a part of the solution. Let's welcome Dr. Carl Henson. He's an infectious disease specialist from the Medical City. Also with us is Dr. Ronvin Pagtakhan. He is the founder and CEO of Love Yourself Incorporated. Thank you both for joining us on this program and this very important topic that we have. Now, I'll start first with Dr. Carl. Bakit nagkaganon? What's happening? And who are the most affected by this?
When people have sexual relations, they're not using the correct protection. And we see more and more, at least I have a lot of patients these days who have multiple sexual partners. No? So the usual risk factors for HIV, we see it a lot in young people. Actually, not just young people. We see it a lot in society these days. No? So, and that's why I think it's very important for us to emphasize the need to educate for the use of, safe sexual practices, etc.
Now, the number of cases among males having sex with males has significantly increased. But as we mentioned, majority of these Filipinos weren't even aware of the disease and its complications. Dr. Vin, can we pinpoint this to a lack of education kung bakit tayo one of the highest countries in the world actually na steady ang akyat ng HIV and AIDS? Is it purely or predominantly the lack of education?
Well, it's multiple factors. So number one is people are becoming a little bit aware, but they do not understand the consequences of their actions. For example, when people engage in unprotected penetrative sex, because sex is very accessible nowadays. Despite the pandemic, we saw an increasing number of cases in the country. For example, just from January to September, we had almost 100,000 newly diagnosed people living with HIV despite the pandemic. And just this September, with the latest HARP report from the Department of Health, we had 980 cases. And this is not just because of lack of awareness, because, information is there already, but call to action mainly ang kailangan natin. We need people to understand the concept of combination prevention when it comes to HIV.
But for now, let's talk about the human immunodeficiency virus, or HIV. Dr. Carl, for someone who's heard of this just for the first time, how would you explain it? What exactly is HIV?
So HIV is human immunodeficiency virus, like you said, no? So it's a virus, and viruses by nature do not have their own reproductive capacity. No, they need a host cell, and they use the host cell to replicate. HIV, the host cell is yung immune system ng tao, no? Specifically CD4 positive cells. Essentially, the virus attacks our immune system, specifically CD4 positive cells. If they attack these cells, eventually these cells will become infected and they will die. At the initial point of infection, the person with the CD4 positive cells will have a lot of it. But if the infection becomes continues unabated and untreated, no, you will run out of CD4 positive cells.
Okay.
And if you run out of CD4 positive cells, that's when you see all these opportunistic infections, no, the signs of a weakened immune system. Yun na yung point where you call it AIDS, or acquired immunodeficiency syndrome.
Let's talk about the progression of the disease, Dr. Carl. Tell us what happens to a person on day one once they're infected.
When someone gets infected with HIV, the virus takes a couple of days, no, to establish an infection. It will, for a while, circulate in the blood before really establishing or infecting cells that parang in the immune system. So it establishes an infection in the immune system lining our gut, etc., no, our lymph nodes. And once the virus takes a hold of the immune system, it unfortunately becomes a permanent feature of that immune system. At our current level of technology, we have no way of curing HIV.
Dr. Vin, when it comes to the initial phases ng HIV, a lot of those infected may misconstrue or pwede nilang pagkamalan yung mga initial symptoms ng HIV na meron silang lagnat. Is this possible? What are some of the signs, Doc Vin, na nag-uumpisa na ang HIV?
A person can experience acute retroviral syndrome, but it's really non-specific. That's why whenever we have patients, we always encourage our patients who are sexually active, who are showing signs and symptoms of potential HIV, which are, common infections, which are recurrent, like sore throat, flu-like symptoms, to get themselves tested every 6 months. So this is the only bulletproof way that you would know that you have HIV is for you to get yourself tested. People develop, pneumonia that's caused by fungi, when in fact you usually see fungi lang sa skin. So these are red flags already for doctors and healthcare providers to think na this client might have HIV. But the only way for us to make sure that it is really HIV is for that client to get him or herself tested.
When it comes to testing for HIV, how sensitive are the tests? How soon can they detect that someone is HIV positive?
Before, when you have HIV, you need to wait for 2 to 3 months for you to get yourself tested if you think you were exposed to HIV. But the newest innovation that we brought it last year in the Philippines during the height of the pandemic, is the self-testing kit. So the Sure Check self-test kit, it just needs 3 weeks from your last unprotected penetrative sexual intercourse for it to detect if you have HIV.
Where can someone avail of this home test kit for HIV, Dr. Vin? Because I think this is one of the reasons why maybe a lot of people are not getting tested is the privacy factor of it.
Oh, they can just visit www.loveyourself.ph or go to bit.ly/selfcareph, because self-care kits are not readily available in markets or pharmacies. You can only avail it through the program that we have called Self-Care.
Okay.
And so it's free, and you can access it through our website lang.
HIV and AIDS can cause a number of complications like opportunistic infections as well as cancers. We'll discuss this after a short break. So stay with us on MedTalk Health Talk only on CNN Philippines. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines, where caring is our calling. HIV is a virus that attacks our immune system, and this means that the disease can weaken your defense against many other opportunistic infections as well as malignancies. Having a healthy lifestyle and taking your treatment is key in preventing its progression. Dr. Carl, let's talk about some of these. Ano ba yung opportunistic infections? Bakit ito madalas makikita with someone with AIDS?
We call it opportunistic infections for a reason. No? In someone with a normal immune system, these infections normally don't cause problems. Earlier on, Dr. Vin mentioned fungal pneumonias. No? Fungi normally doesn't cause problems in someone with a good immune system. You can inhale it, and then it just stays there, doesn't cause any problems. But in someone with very weak immune system, it can actually cause very severe problems. An example would be pneumocystis hiroveci pneumonia. So pneumocystis is a type of fungus that it's what's called ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It doesn't normally cause problems, but in someone with very low CD4 counts, it can actually cause a very bad type of pneumonia, which patients can die from, no? Especially if their oxygen saturations remain very low, etc. So there are many different kinds of infections that are called opportunistic, and they only happen when the patient has very low immune system. So pneumocystis is one of them. Candida, it's another kind of fungus where you see parang cheese-like material in your mouth. No, so yun, many different kinds.
Okay, so aside from PCP, people can also get some forms of malignancies as well. Dr. Vin, tell us more about this. Ano pa bang aside from pneumonia, ano pa yung ibang mga infections ang pwedeng makuha ng isang person with AIDS?
Well, one of the most common infections or what do you call this, opportunistic infection that a client will get sa clinic natin when we test 100 to 120 per day. Normally, nagpa-positive doon is 10 to 12 people. And when those 10 to 12 people, newly diagnosed people living with HIV, starts their treatment, we notice that 10 to 15% of them actually have tuberculosis as well.
Dr. Carl, let's talk about treatment now for someone who took the home HIV test, found that they are positive. What should they do now? Should they start treatment right away?
In my clinic, I give them a request for, I need to look for other infections, syphilis, TB, hepatitis, etc. So that when I form my treatment plan, it's a more cohesive, looking for, for example, if I need to treat syphilis or I need to treat TB first before I give them medications. But eventually, the final common pathway is I will then endorse them to the Medical City's treatment hub, a clinic called iReact. And that's where they get their medications. So once they are ready for treatment. The medications, we need to emphasize, they're actually free. The government purchases the medications for our patients. They just really need the endorsement of a doctor saying na they are ready to start treatment for HIV. The medications, in most cases, the medications are the 3-in-1 pills. When we treat HIV, they need 3 medications ideally. And in the Philippines, there are 2 forms where the 3 medications are rolled into 1 pill. So you only need to take 1 pill per day. And that really is the start of the treatment for HIV.
Okay, that's very good because right now the current treatment is 1 pill per day as opposed to treatment as it was several years ago. So there is better patient compliance nowadays when it comes to treatment. Now, Dr. Vin, when it comes to the treatment of HIV, sabi ni Doc Carl, this is free. Is treatment also available at Love Yourself PH? Kailangan bang may qualification ito or whether can afford or hindi maka-afford, bata or matanda, will be able to avail of treatment for HIV?
Fred, you're right po. It's free and it's available in our community center. So Love Yourself currently has 9,100 clients who are on treatment for HIV, and I'm happy to share with you na around 92% of them who are eligible for viral load testing, usually sila po yung naggagamot na for more than a year, are virally suppressed, which means they cannot transmit the infection anymore. We also introduced a new set of medications last year because 10% of people living with HIV undergoing medication, the 3-in-1 pill that Doc mentioned a while ago. Some of them, they develop some sort of psychological side effects like inability to sleep or vivid dreams or severe headaches or some sort of mild anxiety or depression. So what we did is we proposed to the Philippine government to start and introduce a new drug called dolutegravir, which is the same drug, but it does not have the side effects of the previous generation of drugs. We have life coaches who will assess the psychological needs of our clients. So kailangan lang lakasan ng loob ng ating mga kababayan and get themselves tested.
With proper treatment and a healthy lifestyle, many people living with HIV and AIDS can expect a near to normal lifespan. But ultimately, the search for the cure is still on the way. Now, the best thing that you can do is to take steps in your everyday to prevent the transmission of this virus. Now, more on this when we return. Your health is our mission here on MedTalk Health Talk. You're watching CNN Philippines. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and this is Med Talk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. HIV is a lifelong condition, but as mentioned, having HIV is not a death sentence. Now, understanding how it's transmitted and how to prevent it can make a huge difference. Dr. Carl, let's re-emphasize the ways in which HIV is transmitted. And could you clarify, can HIV be contracted if bodily fluids is ingested?
It's a very small risk, but the risk is not zero. No, so when you look at the textbooks, really the most important mode of transmission is sexual intercourse. So the infected fluid are the semen, the vaginal secretions. No, yun yung number one talaga na nakaka-transmit, and blood, of course.
Okay.
Blood is maybe the ultimate mode of transmission.
Okay.
But sometimes, so if for example the oral mucosa gets exposed to a heavily infected, say, seminal fluid or vaginal fluid, it's theoretically possible for you to get HIV that way. Although, like I said, it's a much lower risk than penetrative intercourse.
What can someone do aside from being aware on how HIV is transmitted? What can someone do who is HIV positive? What can you suggest how they live a very fruitful and full life?
Well, there are general principles, no, for that I tell patients whenever they are whenever I first start treatment, no. Essentially, kailangan healthy lifestyle, especially if we diagnose them in the AIDS level of the illness, no. With weak immune systems, they can't really be exposed to a lot of possible infection risk. So they need to take good care of themselves, not expose themselves to too many people from whom they can get opportunistic infections. No, but as the treatment progresses and they start to get better, then those restrictions fall away, and they are able to more or less resume their normal activities.
Napaka-importante na information yon. Dr. Vin, I'd like to ask, if someone is HIV positive, what is your advice if they would like to have a relationship who is HIV negative?
So a person living with HIV na partner ng isang negative is called a serodiscordant couple. So for those kinds of clients, so number one, we encourage the client living with HIV to make sure that he or she takes his or her medication daily to make sure that he becomes virally suppressed. For the partner, we offer different forms of combination prevention for them. So number one is what we call the condoms and lubricants, because, you know, it's a protective barrier. But for clients who are not comfortable using condoms and lubricants, we have an innovation called pre-exposure prophylaxis. It's a pill that you take every day. It's a preventive pill. It's a prophylaxis. You need to take it if you're sexually active. You need to take it every day to prevent the risk for acquiring HIV, but it does not prevent the risk of acquiring other STIs, just HIV.
Thank you, infectious disease specialist Dr. Carl Henson, and Love Yourself PH founder Dr. Ronvin Pagtacan, for sharing with us your insights on this topic. Marami pong salamat sa inyo. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and thank you for watching Med Talk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. We'll see you again next time. Stay safe.